Ryan and I just played Winds of Numa Sera. This is a new game from a publisher called Dark Rose, and they're the same people who created the graphic novel on which this is based. To give you a general sense, this is, if you're looking for political intrigue, battling with each other, negotiating with people around the table, and that sort of experience, this game has that with very simple mechanics.
Yeah, I would say it's a pretty easily approachable game. It is set in that world where there's kind of a power struggle happening between these four great houses, and you're going to play as one of those great houses, and the house kind of features a unique set of leaders, and you're going to get to choose your main hero. There's actually a line of succession that you're setting. You're getting to equip that hero, level them up with skills, assign them classes like in an RPG, get some NPC followers along the way, all while trying to battle the other players in a race to completing one of 4 victory conditions. And this is definitely not a game where you can just sit back and quietly complete your objectives. It's the kind of game where as soon as one player gets close to completing an objective, right, it's a dog pile. And
everyone's going to have to pounce on them.
And the game leans into that for sure. It wants you and it encourages you to negotiate with the players at the table, to talk, to plan, to strategize, even directly trading with other players, buying favors from players, maybe even securing safety for yourself from other players by spending money and things like that.
Or hoping to. I don't think all trades are enforced. I think the game encourages you to do just about anything you want to in terms of hey, how about you not attack me for the next couple rounds? I'll give you this. And then Ryan attacks me.
Right, but then everyone at the table is not going to trust you again. Another word you say is just going to be lies. Everything's lies.
And we'll get to who it's for and who it's not for a little later, but I just want to point out, after having said that, that will give you the flavor for who this game is for and who it's not. If that is ugh, then maybe not. But there's a lot of people out there who love that sort of experience where it's just oh yeah. Backstabbing.
This is backstabbing. This is PvP. Like I said, there's 4 goals that you're trying to complete, and some of them, there are a couple that you don't really need to interact with people. You can do some things to unlock classes. There's 5 different classes. If you unlock all 5 classes, you win. But again, that's harder than it sounds because each class has a requirement that wants you to do a little bit of some other thing. So you can't win without fighting with the classes. There's a champion victory for just defeating 3 enemy heroes. That is a direct PvP. I mean, you are trying to
my faction was about that, which is not typically my kind of thing, but I did lean into it. I was constantly trying to attack Ryan's heroes here. I was getting equipment, which is another thing you can do and sort of better your chances, but it's not just all the equipment, and I think this goes for all the cards in the game too that you'll find, is they do wildly different things. I have some equipment, some defensive equipment that just simply increased my defensive stats. But then there's some other defensive equipment that was if you win the battle or if you lose a battle, something happens. So someone, if they're not paying attention, I'm going to go attack David, come in and oh, good, because I have my Curious of Thorns and it did damage back. Which is really interesting. There's a lot of things to kind of look after and keep track of because as you secure a lot of these cards, like Ryan was saying, a lot of them have when this happens. So there's a lot of things that over the course of the game you can kind of build up and have a really interesting variable set of powers going on.
And speaking of the equipment and the stats changing and everything, that's why we're holding these dry erase markers that we're probably fiddling with. You're actually using these on your player board. These are dry erase player boards, and you're keeping track of your stats because your stats might change. Each hero has their own unique stats, but those stats might be modified by equipment or other bonuses you get. And then you have your whole building section on the right side of your board. This is another area where you can possibly win the game by achieving 4 strongholds. Each stronghold that you take over during the game is going to increase your income, and every time you build, you're getting income, and you're kind of checking out this tree down here, checking off different powers on this tree to gain some benefits for you over the course of the game. But again, this is another aspect that's heavily PvP because if you're at your 3rd stronghold and there's 3 other players at the table, you might be lucky to have 1 when it comes back around to you because everyone's going to notice that and everyone's going to go after it.
Yeah, in fact, that's how Ryan won our game of this. Now, we did just play it at 2 players. It's going to be a wildly, I think, different experience at a full player count for sure. I do think it leans into that. But yeah, there's a lot of things you can do. We've talked about a lot of the different parts of the board, but the gameplay itself is extraordinarily simple. On your turn, you're going to explore. You have to do this. You take the top card off of this deck, and one of a couple things are going to happen. It could be this. There's an eyeball at the bottom here. That means you reveal this, announce it, and resolve that card. There's a number of different types of cards like this. Some of them are bad. Some of them might be equipment. Some of them might be mavens that can give you some benefits or like a one-time instant benefit. A lot of them are going to be battle cards that you're going to use during battle. But you have to do this at the beginning of every turn. Then you can actually do a number of things kind of in and around that. You can buy, you can equip, you can trade, you can use. This is when you're buying equipment, using your money, things like that. It's all kind of loose, those rules. But then you're going to go into the second phase of your turn, which is to either build, like Ryan said, is to go into that build tree, effectively just tick off the next box that you can.
And get your income.
And get your income, or attack. And when you attack, like we mentioned, you can attack these strongholds, you can attack strongholds that other players control, or you can attack the heroes themselves.
Yeah, trying to defeat them, and all these things are going to push you towards your win goal condition. And you can actually increase your powers beyond that as well. There's this whole row of skills, which we didn't really even explore too much in our game because they are expensive. But we didn't really explore the skills, and those just make you stronger. If you reach level 4 of any given skill, that's an in-game trigger as well to win. And again, it's a full-on race. But I did want to say, I think part of the reason that this game does feel so easy to learn or feels so streamlined is because of the way they built these boards out. Everything you need to play, including the turn overview, is very clear. They show you the steps of your battle, your hero stats. There's a battle die you're rolling. You're getting a score. You're playing a battle card. And they have maybe one of the most robust player aids that I've ever seen in a game.
It's very visual.
Everything is very easy to follow. They have all of the rules set aside and the different charts of like step 1, step 2, step 3. Even when it feels like a simple action, they still break it down to make it even simpler to follow. So I think this is another great game too. If you've got people at the table that enjoy that PvP but don't play medium or even heavy games, not that this is one, I think this is a really good introduction piece because it does make it very simple, and you are going straight to PvP right from turn 1. Like you're jumping right into it, fighting each other, yelling at each other, throwing money at each other, all that stuff.
Yeah, this is definitely not a multiplayer solitary sort of game. No. You have to stay on top of what your opponents are doing. The whole thing is based on who gets there first on one of these sort of 4 fronts.
Well, yeah, and I think that's very clearly leading into who it's for. I mean, you will know if your group is that kind of group. I mean, this game is built for that group that's yelling at each other, that's very communicative during a game.
Having fun while doing so.
Right, in a fun way. Yeah, but you've seen these groups. You know the group. If you've got one, you know it. And if you haven't, you've probably seen them at game days who are just very much like, oh, we can't let David get the upper hand here. David won the last 3 games. Like, we're going to gang up on David. Or like, and meanwhile, David's like, I got a lot of money, like I'm trading them, he's greasing the palms.
Let's do a deal. Right. Now, on the flip side of that specifically, are groups not like that, but also groups that maybe have one player that's not like that. If someone's not going to have fun with the ups and downs of that sort of negotiation and backstabbing, they might have a trouble having fun with this game. Now, the mechanics of it are very simple, but they just might see someone else run away with the game right away.
And that's part of the thematics. And I think this is also for groups that invest themselves in the thematic play. I'm going to compare this to King's Dilemma, Queen's Dilemma, even though
the game's completely
different in how it's played, but that they give you this role. They give you this house with some backstory and a character that you're playing, and you're equipping to this character. You're going on these explorations with this character. So the game really wants you to lean into the thematics of that, of like,
absolutely.
Hey, I'm a peaceful house. Like, I'm not going to come fight you, and whatever. That negotiation level of like inhabiting that character. Some people prefer to play games from a strictly mechanical sense. And I will say, from a mechanical sense, if you're just looking at mechanics, a lot of it's like, okay, it's procedural. You're playing a card, you're rolling a die. It's very swingy. There's a lot of luck. But I think for players that enjoy the thematics of it, that luck and all that is part of it. Whereas I think maybe players that are looking for a more dry, adventure-y kind of experience, which is very deterministic, this game is not that.
No, it is not that. With that said, I wouldn't say it's purely chaotic or not at all deterministic. You can go into certain situations if you've built up and you've got the right battle cards. You're like, okay, I can pretty much guarantee I'm going to take one of these strongholds.
Yeah.
Like, that's for sure. You can look at that and go, there's no secret information coming out. Now, if you attack someone else, even if you go in with the strongest of situations, you don't know what their battle cards are.
Yeah,
like you might have a great battle card, and they might have one that says battle cards don't mean anything.
Or the die roll doesn't mean anything.
So
or you should run away.
It's really crazy. So you have to be prepared with like, oh, I've got it all set up. This is going to be good. And then someone foils those plans. It really just leans into the theme. And that's the other thing I wanted to mention in terms of who this is for. The theme does a really good job of pulling you in. Like I said, I don't usually play the aggressive role, but I very easily slid into that with the powers that my faction had. Not to mention, this game is beautiful. The artwork, the production, all of that very, very easily pulled me in. Like these cards, I don't know if all the versions of the game are going to be like this.
This is the deluxe edition that we have in front
probably
of us.
The deluxe edition. These cards have a spot gloss and almost what looks like a foil treatment on some of the parts. So like this character has jewelry that's like shimmering in the light.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Very, very nice. And that goes a long way to pull you in for what's really effectively a card game.
I mean, it really is. It's all driven by the cards, but of course, like we said, that having that dry erase board, having like that RPG feeling of leveling up, really does lead into, I think, your enjoyment. Now, the one caveat we want to say is David and I did play this at 2 players.
Yeah,
it's a very different experience at 2 because it does kind of you get to a point where it almost requires one player to keep the other player in check back and forth if you want to play that way, or you just have to decide, whatever, we're just going to try to race and complete our objectives and not go 1v1. We definitely did have a lot of player interaction in a 1v1 game.
We did.
But I think in a 4-player game, you're going to have so much more. And I won because I was able to get 2 turns in a row where I got strongholds.
Yeah.
And, maybe David could have made a choice to try to take one from me, but,
but
whatever.
I didn't.
He didn't.
But I didn't. I wasn't paying attention. It's one of those things where there's so many things you're paying attention to, you just might miss that. And at a table full of 4 people,
no, it's not going to be
other
missed.
people are going to be looking. And like I said, I'm not a competitive player, so I'm not always focused on that sort of thing. So with 4 players, it's more likely going to have a little bit more lively conversation, obviously. Certainly some more negotiation, because in 2 players, we're not negotiating.
Yeah, and that's
like,
the thing
we're not
too.
going to negotiate with
you
each
kind of
other.
miss out on trade at 2 players because it's like, I don't want to trade you anything.
I'm not giving you anything. If you think you're getting a good deal, it means I'm getting a bad deal.
Right. Now, in a 4-player game, I might be okay giving somebody a good deal.
Sure.
If they're not winning, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's going to be one of us. Everything I give you is something I lose. It's a very clear, tug of war. But in a 4-player game, it's much harder to feel out who is close to winning at any given time. So it's a lot easier to be able to make those trades. I think.
So long story short on that, I wouldn't write off the 2-player game. I would be interested once their campaign is live to see.
It was enjoyable.
Yeah, it was enjoyable. I do think I would probably almost always want to play this with 4 as opposed to 2.
Which is rare, actually.
Maybe 3 too. Like a 3 is probably better than 2. It's just going to get better and better, I think, when you get to the max player count.
Yeah, and I would love. This is coming to Kickstarter soon. I would love to see a 5-player expansion even. So
yeah,
I'd love to see this up to 5 players.
The type of game it is, I was a little surprised to see that it was 2 to 4.
And
so
I like
we'll
those.
see.
I like those odd numbers there because you can't just have like teams kind of form out. It's interesting.
That's true, but that is Winds of Numa Sera. If you have any questions at all about it, if you want to see anything else, come to our Discord or get down in the comments below. But at our Discord, you can say, hey, can we see some of the cards? We'll take some photos and show you some of the cards. But until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.